All right, we will get everyone started. Good morning, everyone. This is Alan Kwok. I'm the Director of Disaster Resilience for Northern California Grantmakers and Philanthropy California, which is an alliance of Northern California Grantmakers, Southern California Grantmakers, and San Diego Grantmakers. We are very glad that all of you are joining us this morning. And just to before we begin, just a little bit of etiquette. Everyone's sound should be muted, and if you do have, for all the speakers that will be speaking, I'll prompt you, and then feel free on your end, please unmute yourself. And for all the other participants who have joined us, we will have a Q&A session towards the end, so you can feel free to put in your questions in the chat box that is below on your Zoom screen, or you can unmute yourself at the Q&A session. The purpose of this morning's call is, of course, we are experiencing all of these wildfires in Northern California, in which almost every county is being impacted at the moment. And the purpose of this call is really to share with all of you what are some of the government responses currently, and how funders can respond to not only local challenges, but also to address some of the most immediate as well as long-term needs. And we also will be hearing from many of the funders how communities are addressing some of the long-term challenges as wildfires and COVID-19 converge, and how philanthropy can support all of these different needs. This wildfire season is definitely very different than previous years in that we are experiencing not only wildfires, but also many of the wildfires impacts are exacerbating COVID-19. So many of the speakers today will be sharing some of these challenges, compounded challenges. So this is going to be a very tight call. So I just want to ask all of the speakers to make your responses succinct and short, and share any information via chat box. We will be sharing, or hopefully you'll be okay with it, sharing contact information with the audience towards the end of this call. So let's begin. We would like to welcome to first talk about the government responses. What is the state of California as well as the federal government are doing? We have the pleasure to have Abby Browning from Cal OES, who is going to speak about some of these government responses. So Abby, if you can unmute yourself, maybe the first question I have for you is, how might these fires play out? How long are we expecting these fires to last for?
Well, that's part of the problem right now, Alan, honestly. First of all, thank you for having me and allowing me to speak this morning. The fires are all over the state. They're up and down the state, and we still have some red flag warnings and some concerns of new fires because of dry lightning starting. And we are in the thick of fire season, just obviously because of the state's on fire. But other than that, this is when it happens anyway. And so late August, September, October. So these are going to be the next few months that we're going to be seeing this. And so I wish I could tell you when this would wrap down. My leadership told me that we were going to be in this run phase for the next 2 weeks. So maybe by September, things we'll have a bit more of a handle on things.
Right. So how is your government agency, how is the state of California currently supporting communities impacted by the fire? What are they doing?
Okay. Yeah, so what's really interesting is over the weekend, we did receive our federal declaration for a major disaster. And so that changes things quite a bit. But what the state has been doing thus far, of course, we have CAL FIRE and Cal OES Fire, which is coordinating all of the fire response. We have, I believe they said this morning, 730 engines that are part of our mutual aid system within the state. We are also collecting and requesting engines from all over the country, all of the states. and some from Canada and Australia. Now, having said that, we have quite a few communities that do have evacuees. And what has happened thus far, because we're in COVID, so we don't do things easy here in California. We're in the middle of COVID. How do you evacuate? What do you do? We're trying our best to stay away from congregate sheltering because it just becomes very difficult to keep everyone healthy. And we're using mostly non-congregate sheltering. I believe the number right now is 1,400 hotel rooms across the state that we have got people in. We put them in these hotel rooms, some schools that have dormitories, depending on where they are. Between the county, the state, and the American Red Cross, that's where we put everybody, and we also feed them while they're there and do their laundry and things like that. We have our health folks that go in and check on their health constantly, and now because we have the federal declaration, we're starting to have them fill out paperwork and go through it. Part of the big issue, and in my opinion, one of the worst things about where these people are is that they know that their area was evacuated. They know that their area was threatened by fires, but they have no idea if their home was hit or not. That they know that as of right now, we've counted 1,500 lost homes around the state, but they don't know if that's theirs. And so that's where we are right now, trying to keep them as comfortable as possible while they are evacuated. But like I mentioned, it is a very large situation. And as of this morning, there were 174,000 Californians evacuated.
Wow. Thank you. And you mentioned around, that the state is providing some non-congregate shelters, including hotels or dormitories. With this FEMA declaration of major disasters, what financial resources should local communities or individuals impacted by the fire should be expecting? The reason I'm asking is we can figure out where philanthropy can do the most good.
Yeah, absolutely. So with the federal declaration, we did get individual assistance. So what that means is that people will be able to apply to receive a cash stipend from FEMA and assistance with housing and helping them find housing after they find out their house was lost. It is not a very large amount. I believe $3,600 is the most a family can get, which is nothing compared to it. However, you have to go through a lot of hoops in order to get that. Not everybody does, so for example, if you have homeowners insurance that's going to cover it, then you don't get the FEMA money. You have, if you have savings or other kinds of insurance or something like that, then you don't get the FEMA money. It's very difficult. So there's a very large group that's in the middle of these folks, people that were displaced or have a threatened home or have a damaged home, not destroyed, just damaged. And therefore they have insurance, but it's never enough. Most people in California are underinsured. And so they're not getting the FEMA assistance because they're not low income enough. So that, in my opinion, is a huge place where philanthropy can help and get them moving beyond, because sometimes all you need is that little small cash infusion just to keep moving.
Right. And how about the undocumented folks or people with, are they able to get FEMA money?
No, they are not. And this is part of the problem. And why we're so grateful for folks like the Undocu Fund and Latino Foundation and GSER, those that help specifically those communities, because in California we have an ideology, a mantra, if you will. We're not checking green cards. We're not checking citizen status. If you need assistance and you need help, you'll get it. This is what California is about. However, our federal partners, they individually, the people themselves feel the same way. They just want to help people. That's why you work in a job like this. But they have leadership and rules that come down where they cannot. And there's a lot of fear that happens So even though we're not going to check IDs and turn people away at the Red Cross shelter, that doesn't mean that they're not afraid to go. And so that is something that we try to focus on because we know it's a gap, especially now that our federal partners are here, and work with those communities.
Thank you. I know you have to get going soon, but I just want to maybe open up to anyone. Does anyone have any questions for Abby before she gets back onto her duty at the Cal OES? Feel free to put questions in the chat box. While we do that, maybe Kathleen Jennings from the governor's office. She's basically our philanthropic liaison for the state of California. Maybe you can share, maybe highlight, but she'll be joining us and sharing a little bit more around what philanthropy can do. But based on what Abby said, are there any comments you want to make, Kathleen?
Well, just that I think it's so important to acknowledge the setting and the framing for where we are. I mean, this is all happening in the midst of a global pandemic, and we know that so many of you have already done so much, and I think all of us are feeling a little bit of disaster fatigue at this point. And yet it's so important that we step in at this moment to support the thousands of families that have been evacuated or lost so much. And philanthropy plays such an important role in disaster, and really excited to see this call come together and to ensure that our efforts are aligned with our statewide response so that we can all be more impactful with our work.
Great, thank you. Abby, we have one question. One is, does FEMA individual assistance help those who lost homes that were renting, or just for homeowners only?
No, it's both actually. The way that it is done though, it's all about proof. You have to prove about what you lost and what you don't have. Unfortunately, a lot of renters don't have that mindset when it comes to like insurance and taking pictures of what you have and what you don't, but it does cover it if they are able to be a part of it. And there's a lot of other things other than just that financial assistance that comes through that we encourage anyone and everyone, no matter what your situation is, to register with FEMA, and they can help you because the people that are the actual people on the ground, they truly want to find everything to assist you. And so they will go through all of the programs to figure out where you fit. And if you don't fit, then they will work with our nonprofit partners on the ground to find some kind of help for those people. I did see a comment in the chat box from Lori with Solano Community Foundation. So many evacuees are sleeping in their cars. That is a very good point I wanted to bring up, that yes, no matter what we do, and as far as congregate sheltering, as far as hotels, as far as moving around and stuff, some people just aren't comfortable with that. And so we have to be careful there. We have issues sometimes with pets, whether or not they're allowed to bring their pets in. We're trying to change a lot of that because of what happened during the campfire. I know that I personally would not want to go anywhere without my pet. And so there might be that. There are residents that need to have firearms to protect them in some areas, they feel, and they're not allowed to bring those into congregate sheltering. So they sleep in their cars, or they just don't feel that it is safe enough with the health situations going on. And so we rely a lot on our nonprofit partners to help with those folks as well, because they're in the middle of a disaster. Who am I to judge what they want and what they don't want, what needs that they have? And so I just wanted to point that out, that is a huge thing that we're always working on as well.
Great. And one last question for you. Hopefully you can answer that question. If not, if you can share resources for members on this call. Question is, because of COVID-19, many of these interviews, face-to-face interviews for government assistance, including SNAP, the food stamps, would they be waived by the state because of the pandemic, or are they still going to happen?
That's a very good question. It's a question that I do not have the answer to. I'm not, it's above my pay grade as to whether or not it gets waived. But I can tell you that ever since we got the disaster deck over the weekend, my colleagues have been working constantly to try to come up with ways to do this, because the DRC, the Disaster Resource Center, the Local Assistance Center, all of these places that normally get set up, how do we do that now with COVID? You know, you don't want a bunch of people filing into a big giant building and being around potential other sick people. So, I mean, there's a lot of issues that are being addressed. So you will see in the coming days different emergency proclamations, executive orders from the governor that waives certain requirements, and those are all being assessed as we speak.
Thank you. Abby, much appreciated for your time. We will invite you again for our next call. So thank you so much to all of your work, as well as all of your colleagues who are working diligently to ensure that all the communities are safe.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for having me. And my colleague Kathleen is staying on the line, and she likes to think she doesn't, but she knows just as much as I do. And so I'm sure she can answer questions as well.
Thank you, Abby.
Okay. Thanks.
So let's do, because of all the different fires that we're happening in the Northern California region, unlike other previous call, we are going to kind of like shift the conversation to the local impacts on wildfires. We're going to do it a little bit differently. We are going to by regions. So we are just going to by, when I say regions, that means it's by regions impacted by a fire complex or multiple fires. So we are going to first go to our first region in Napa, Sonoma, Solano, and potentially small sections around Yolo County and Lake County that is impacted by the LNU complex. So I'm going to have Julia from Napa Valley Community Foundation really to share what is she seeing on the ground, as well as what are some of the biggest challenges facing those impacted, especially due to the fire impact and the convergence of fire impact and COVID-19. So Julia, if you can share maybe 1 or 2 minutes what you're seeing in Napa Valley.
Great, thanks so much, Alan. Thanks for inviting us. Well, in Napa, like in many of your regions, we do not have a diversified economy. The majority of our low-wage paid workforce work in agriculture and hospitality, many of whom are undocumented and not eligible for government-sponsored benefits like employment when disasters strike. And unfortunately, we've learned that the tourism industry is always the first to be interrupted in disaster. So to that end, our ongoing COVID emergency financial assistance program has been geared towards rent relief for undocumented residents who've been affected either by lost wages or because they're forced to suddenly discontinue working because they're under quarantine or isolation orders. In the last month or so, we've seen a lot of farm workers affected by COVID outbreaks, first in congregate farm worker settings and then in others living in outside settings but in overcrowded housing. So until the fires, our biggest concern was the safety of the migrant workers coming into town for harvest and the impact that the COVID spread might have on them working and living in close quarters, and the further outbreaks would have on community health at large. So we've been running an ongoing program to financially support farm workers so that they can stay home and quarantine if that is warranted. Now the added concern, of course, is on the working conditions of farm workers that are still working outside in the smoke. It remains to be seen what additional intermediate term impacts the fires will have on our economy, but in past fires, it did cause longer term interruption to the tourism, which was really affected those in the informal economy and self-employed residents. What we can see so far, however, is that the areas in Napa most affected by structure destruction, at least as we understand it now, are areas that are known to be populated by older adults, people with access and functional needs, low-wage workforce, likely people who are underinsured as renters or homeowners, maybe undocumented and not eligible for FEMA. I believe there's at least 50 mobile homes that have been destroyed, if not more. And so it's likely that much of our response will involve assisting those renters and homeowners with content replacement and rebuilding. After the 2017 fires, we saw a vacancy rate of less than 1%. So we will have a lot of displacement and a need for philanthropy to step in with, I think, rehousing assistance and rent support.
Thank you, Julia. And these are the populations that you have mentioned, the same populations that have been disproportionately impacted by COVID-19. Do you see, maybe one quick question, do you see, there's a further need, to support these vulnerable communities?
Yeah, absolutely. I think in the past, our emergency financial assistance has kind of taken two flavors. One for those whose homes weren't burned or damaged, but they were unable to work because the restaurant they worked in closed or cut hours. And then those who, may not be facing lost wages, but have, lost their homes and don't have insurance and are not eligible for FEMA. And so I think that continued philanthropic efforts will look at how do we kind of merge the financial assistance we're doing around COVID with financial assistance for a new population of people who may be affected by lost wages. And then, take a look at what's that gap out there between what people need to rebuild or get rehoused and what is available to them either through their insurance or savings or government benefits.
Wonderful. Thank you, Julia. Karen, maybe I will have you come up next. Karen from Community Foundation, Sonoma County. Maybe, are there anything you would like to add based on what Julia said and what you're seeing in Sonoma County?
Well, we're seeing very much the same thing. We're in the very early stages of all this. It's hard to know what the impact is going to be, but always we know that there are certain members of our community that will be disproportionately impacted, and that's where our attention is going to go. I mean, it happens to be also harvest time right now, so we are similarly concerned about our farm workers who are actually continuing to work in evacuation zones. There's been a big effort here locally to get them masks that are both COVID and going to support their health with the smoke. And really what is the responsibility of their employers to partner with us and make sure everybody stays safe. So we're deeply concerned there. Our community foundation, we have also put medium to long term in the mix. So we're all thinking right now, yes, basic human needs are what we're needing. Without congregate shelters, we have people in hotels, we have people in homes, and they need food, they need their basic necessities, and being sure that we're getting that to them has been challenging because we aren't in a congregate setting. So we're really targeting gift cards is a really a simpler way, but at the same time, we have to keep remembering our intake forms need to be, we need to be thinking long-term when we're taking in information that we can still always contact people and we can get back in touch with them. Are we going to launch a long-term recovery committee? We don't know that yet. So, the phase that we're in right now is really about meeting immediate needs for people who are living in their cars or living in hotels and need to be fed. There's also, when it mixes with COVID, we heard the story of a family who took in family members. There's a lot of that happening. And then the shame they feel around being in a setting that isn't necessarily following COVID protocols and the fear of reaching out to ask for assistance with food when they might be considered unsafe with COVID. So the commingling of these two things is making people feel very, very concerned and sometimes keeping them from reaching out for the help that they need.
Right,
I think,
and that's a really good point. Yeah, that the previous fires, people are readily sharing resources and welcoming people in their homes. We are not. I think there is a layer of fear right now because of COVID-19.
There is a layer, and of course that in Sonoma County, and I'm sure it's the same in Napa. What we're seeing is over 70% of those who've been impacted by COVID are Latinx community members, and the resources that they are needing, it's very challenging to say, yeah, actually don't drive to work with 4 people in the car. but you know, it's still, yes, you need to put food on your table. So, you know, meeting the needs of our community members while addressing the fires, like it's all one big challenge right now.
Thank you, Karen. We'll have Lisa Carrero from Another Way Wine Country that serves the wine country region. Anything you want to add to it or share with folks on this call?
Alan, thank you for calling on me. United Way of the Wine Country is the administrator for 211 Sonoma, and I'm actually going to defer my report to my colleague, our Executive Vice President, Jennifer O'Donnell, who is overseeing our 211 Sonoma response and has information about the types of calls we're getting. We are experiencing much higher call volume. And also Jennifer chairs our local COAD coalition. So let Jennifer report out, Alan.
Honestly, with 211, we're not seeing, right now, people are concerned with their safety. So the majority of the calls coming in are about, should I be evacuating? Where should I be going? That kind of thing. I expect we'll start to see again calls about food and rental assistance, financial assistance. Those were the kinds of calls we were getting prior to the fires, and this will just be exacerbated. As far as COAD, we have seen a big need for translation services. And so a lot of the nonprofits have really stepped up, and just individual members of the community to supplement the county's efforts to make sure that we're reaching everyone with life-saving information and eventually resources to move forward. There is talk about setting up a kind of like a local assistance center. Not sure if they're going to do it virtually or in person because of COVID, but our COAD partners they're getting good. They're getting a lot of practice at working together. And so looking at having a shared intake form, and even with the gift cards, sometimes it's hard to get the resources, get the cards out as early as we need to. Sometimes the money comes in later. So taking down lists of names of people who do need that support so that we can follow up later. So still really early, you know, a lot of the damage assessments haven't really specified what's here in Sonoma versus some of the other areas. So still really in that early phase of assessing how much damage.
Thank you, Jennifer. There's a question regarding transition services. What specific ones are being referred to? Would you mind typing a response on the chat box for us, or anyone that can answer that question? That would be much appreciated. I think what Jennifer, you mentioned around, you know, a lot of the translation services. I'm just going to transition to Susan Shaw from Untitled Fund. Maybe Susan can share a little bit about, you know, the populations that, you know, the fund supports and what she's seeing on the ground. Susan? And can you unmute yourself, Susan?
Yes, sorry about that. Thank you, Alan, and thank you, everybody. The summary from Karen and Lisa and Jennifer was great. I actually brought Omar Medina with me, who's coordinating getting the aid out as quickly as possible to talk about what's happening on the ground and what happened yesterday and during this week. So I'll defer to him right now. And thanks to all of you.
Hi, everybody. This is Omar Medina with Untitled Fund. I was just telling Susan about an incident yesterday where we had about 12 families in 3 of our cities that were in danger of getting kicked out of the hotels because of issues with coverage of the payments of the hotels by the Red Cross. We were able to find a fix temporarily for that. But I did have the opportunity to interact with about 30 families yesterday that have been evacuated, where today we'll be getting out checks to the very first batch of evacuated families from Untitled Fund. It's about 38 checks related to the fire evacuations. But some of the big issues that I I think I'm seeing right now. It's just a lot of people that are, on top of, the pandemic for undocumented families. There's been the issue of income at work, and this is harvest season. This is when they really need to work, that seasonal work, at peak time. And so in terms of equity, the issues that the undocumented community is facing, specifically the seasonal farm worker community, is going to be great, significant. And the other thing that I think is an issue with not just undocumented, but our immigrant community as a whole, just further applying for benefits like SNAP and stuff. With the, in February 24th, there was the public charge changes to the rules, and there's been all kinds of fear implemented out in the community because of that. People are more afraid to apply. So I think getting people that even are eligible to apply for aid is going to be an issue. And then on top of the fire, we've had COVID, and people that are potentially eligible to apply for disaster unemployment, with all the problems that the unemployment system is having right now, I think it's just going to pile on, and I'm worried that people that could get disaster unemployment aren't going to be able to get it really fast. And for the people that I have to deny because they're not undocumented, that are eligible to apply for other programs, I'm worried that they're not going to be able to get aid fast enough because of the backlog and the problems that are going on because of COVID. So those are some of the big issues that I'm worried about. But right now, it's basically just trying to figure out where people are, getting out to them, working with community partners to get the referrals. And I think so far it's been going okay. Right now, we're building the infrastructure to receive a lot more of those referrals as we raise money to assist people with impacted by the fires.
Thanks,
Wonderful.
Omar.
Omar, thank you so much. Yeah. Susan?
Alan, I also brought Gabriel Machabansky just to give a brief, deeper analysis on the farm worker situation. He's from the Great and Day Labor.
1 minute. So before we go on, I just want to say I will. This is kind of unprecedented of all the wildfires, and we have quite a bit of updates. So I will probably extend this meeting for another 15 minutes. So it will last until 11:15 a.m. PST. Hopefully, most of the other speakers can join and continue on. So I will 1 minute on the updates and in-depth analysis on farm workers. Go ahead.
Okay. Hey folks, Gabriel Machabansky here from the Great and Day Labor Center. Other folks from Sonoma County have been pretty thorough, so I'll try not to duplicate anything. But as Karen from the Community Foundation mentioned, the Sonoma County Agricultural Commission has issued 50 special permits. They did so last week to vineyards and other employers in the evac zones. So we obviously can't help but be concerned about the implications of this, right? Prioritizing the harvest and workers being both in harm's way and not having access to any kind of hazard pay. And obviously the impact of COVID-19 is, employers are already cutting corners and protecting workers against infection, and now they're hustling even more to harvest crops, and certainly the risk there is increasing. So there's clearly a tension in conversations that I've been having with our members at the Great and Day Labor Center. The tension that exists that people need to work, and in a moment sandwiched by a pandemic on one end that resulted in months of lost wages and 2 to 3 more months of potential wildfires that would result in lost income, it's very difficult to tell someone not to go to work when there's likely no unemployment insurance, they have no access to FEMA assistance, wage replacement, or hazard pay. So what we're doing on the ground is we're reaching out to folks to collect their stories. We're putting together a team of legal observers, including worker leaders, organizers, and attorneys, folks that have their eyes and ears on the ground. We're in conversations with more labor-friendly county supervisors about what measures can be taken to prioritize worker health and safety. And we're reaching out to the Farm Bureau and Sonoma County wine growers and other industry associations to coordinate an employer education campaign. But we are ready to go public and shed light on the crisis that we're seeing that is, essentially prioritizing profit over people. And we're continuing to reach out to our community and really try to have as open lines of communication with workers as is humanly possible. So thank you for the minute of your time.
Yeah, thank you, Gabriel. I think that is really important around all how the undocumented folks are definitely further impacted by, not only the political, various different policies, but also COVID-19 and now wildfire. So I'm going to have, I'm not sure if Connie Harris from Solano Community Foundation, are you on the call? If so,
yes,
I know
I'm
your
on the
county
call.
is quite impacted. Wonderful.
Hi.
Will you share very briefly how your county is being impacted at the moment?
All right. Hi, everybody, and thank you, NCG and Alan, for hosting this funders call. My name is Connie Harris, and Dr. Lori Alio, my Director of Strategic Partnerships and Advancement, is also on the call. I just want to say that we have been experiencing the exact same impacts that Sonoma and Napa has, only it's, with us, it's been confined to a swath of fire damage and evacuations in a lot of unincorporated areas. And so the folks that have had to evacuate are trying to find housing and shelter in an already diminished market of availability. So COVID had impacted us quite hard because we are the poorest nonprofit or poorest county in the 9 Bay Area County region. So we were already dealing with COVID challenges in terms of housing for homelessness and worrying about undocumented workers and rent relief, what have you. And now with the fires on top of that, it's just exacerbated a problem that already existed. So we're working with our Solano COED, Community Organizations Active in Disaster. We've been working with them all along with COVID-19, and now we daily meetings with the COED to discuss and try to come together with plans and strategies for alleviating now the fire problems. So right now, all monies are being directed to the Community Foundation, to our Disaster Relief Fund, and we're asking folks that in lieu of physical donations to give us gift cards. And one of the first things that we did as a group with COED is to determine who's already set up to make those cash assistance grants. And we aren't personally as a community foundation, but some of our partner players are. So we're putting the pieces together, and we have a call again this afternoon. We'll have a little bit more information, but we're looking at beginning to make grants from that same disaster relief fund later this week. Luckily, a lot of funders have stepped up, and I have to give big props to Silicon Valley Community Foundation. They've helped us through COVID-19. We couldn't have made grants without their support. And now Genentech has stepped up, and the community as a whole over the weekend with our PayPal giving to that same fund, we received over 160 gifts for $15,000. So the monies are coming in. Now we have to decide where we can invest initially to make the most impact right away. Lori, if you'd like to chime in.
Hi, everybody. I think Connie covered it quite well. I don't know if folks are aware that, we border Napa on one side and Contra Costa on the other. And we also have a substantive farm worker community. We not only have a number of vineyards and a lot of vineyard workers, but, a lot of folks who work in the grapes in neighboring Napa County that's right over the hill, they actually live in Solano because Napa can be very unaffordable, relatively. We're more affordable. But as Connie mentioned, we are the most underfunded county in the Bay Area. We are actually in the Bay Area. I've been told many times that we're not, but I tell people I look out my window at the Bay. But this is going to be something that we're going to be responding to for some time as we move into recovery. It's going to be critical that we both continue to work with all of our nonprofits, including the small ones who have real trusted relationships with folks that have been impacted. and to also be just communicating with folks outside of the county as to what's happening. But thank you so much to NCG for hosting this today, and I'll stop there because I'm sure there's going to be more reports and more questions.
Yeah, thank you, Lori. And thank you so much, Connie. So we are going to move to a different fire complex, ZZU complex that hits San Mateo and Santa Cruz County. I am going to have Latino Community Foundation's Gabriela Orentes maybe share because LCF, they work in multiple counties. So Gabriela, if you can give a very succinct synopsis as to anything that you want to add on to what you have heard so far.
I will just thank you to the partners and funders who have lifted up the translation and interpretation work that has been going on in community to fill the gaps. This is something that not just in our community, but across California, and I'm sure across the US, is a need for emergency alerts to, and the technology that backs it up to be more accessible to the variety of languages spoken, not just within the Latino community, but across California. And this is where many organizations and community leaders have been filling the gaps and advocating for policy change and efforts within our local counties to address. So this is ongoing, but the topic of language justice is one that philanthropy has been supporting and could continue to support in developing the in the training and development of leaders who are ready to serve and do serve in this bilingual, multilingual, multicultural capacity during these times. And that need is ever increasing and could use the support so that there is adequate translation. I grew up translating, many of us grew up interpreting for our parents, but that doesn't automatically mean that you can interpret and translate emergency, vital, life or death information. One bad translation could lead to very dire consequences. And we've seen that over and over again. And so that is why that is an area where there is huge opportunity for partnership. And I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you, Gabriela.
So much was shared.
Yeah, and definitely we hear, the translation is key to ensuring that, our communities who speak a different language other than English can and receive the necessary preparedness and response information. So thank you for highlighting that. So I'm going to have Susan True, if you want to share around what you're seeing in Santa Cruz County. And Susan is from Community Foundation of Santa Cruz County. Thank you.
Thank you. My colleague Keisha Bauer is also on the line from United Way, Santa Cruz County. Our demographics and our economy are very similar to Sonoma and to Napa, so I don't think I need to repeat the issues that people are facing already from income loss in a hospitality-driven economy, all the incredible health issues for our farm workers. We spent much of late last week getting N95s to farm workers, and the eviction moratorium, of course, is a big issue for us. I think what we're seeing in Santa Cruz County is about 1 in 4 people are displaced because of evacuation. So we have a very large part of our population. We're a small county, displaced. We have 4,000 hotel rooms in the county and 67,000 people displaced. So you can get an idea of, we've got people in churches and colleges and anywhere, any parking lot we can find at this point. It's going to be interesting for us because we have a real have and have-nots kind of effect of the burn. Up on our mountain in Bonnie Doon is a pretty affluent area for the most part, same as the North Coast, north of Davenport. In terms of the structures that have burned, we've had over 200 burn, and San Lorenzo Valley, that if you're hearing about, Big Basin, Boulder Creek, Ben Lomond, those are both sort of new tech enclaves because of their proximity to Silicon Valley, but also historically it's been our most affordable housing stock in the county. And so we're really worried about losing that. So far, we haven't lost as many structures in that area, but we're very worried about, and already seeing it, affluent people raising a lot of money really quickly to help each other, and a lot of people left out. So as usual, United Way and Community Foundation will work hard to make sure that those inequities are addressed.
Susan, thank you. Anyone from the United Way from Santa Cruz want to share anything else?
Well, yes, this is Keisha
Wonderful,
Browder.
Keisha.
Thank you.
How are you?
Hi, this is Keisha Browder with United Way of Santa Cruz County. So much was said with Susan, and so we are actually partnering with several United Ways to address these needs. So I'm actually going to turn it over to Kevin Zwick, our CEO of United Way of Bay Area, to talk about the regional efforts that we're doing as a United Way to come together.
Great. And before Kevin, you jump on, we'll have that session later on. So let's do a quick regional report first. Wonderful. So we will have Manny Manuel from Silicon Valley Community Foundation. Are there anything you want to add to it?
Thanks, Alan.
What you've heard.
Yeah, thanks, Alan. Just for us, I just, everything that everybody said is true for Southern San Mateo County. The most impacted region is unincorporated areas in Pescadero, Loma Mar, La Honda. And most of the folks that have been evacuated have been agricultural workers and farm workers. So most of the folks in Pescadero, the evacuation center is in Half Moon Bay. And as you probably know, Half Moon Bay and the coast side do not have a lot of hotels. And so most of the folks have been registered at the evacuation center in Half Moon Bay and been given housing vouchers over the hill, as we say. So you're looking at Redwood City, San Carlos, Burlingame. For a couple of folks or stories that I heard that some of the folks in Pescadero had never actually been over the hill. So there's the issue of language, the issue of transportation, obviously. And once they get to the hotel, everything that everybody mentioned in terms of just food, gift cards, etc. One thing, I just got a text from the 3 agencies that are coordinating the response is that, as Abby mentioned, the state has taken over all the intakes and coordination of hotels, at least, where we are as well. And in Southern Santa Clara County, we're seeing the same thing. We're coordinating with CADRE, which is the Collaborating Agencies for Disaster Response, which is a list of about 15 to 20 agencies in Southern Southern Santa Clara County, providing food, shelter, and anything else that's going to come in, as we see the fires. I'm pretty sure we're going to see this for the next 2 weeks. So with that, I'll leave it for Kevin, because Kevin is going to probably talk to us a little bit about the response. So thank you, Alan.
Thank you, Manny. We will talk about, Kevin, do you want to jump online? Before you talk about maybe you can share with you what you see from the United Way Bay Area, what you are seeing on the ground in communities that you serve.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, as United Way Bay Area, we cover an 8-county region. So the 3 fire complexes that are affecting our various regions are obviously the SCU lighting complex. That's the one in Alameda, Santa Clara, and Contra Costa County. And for the most part, it's a large area, but a small number of structures being affected. But the evacuation zone is moving more into East San Jose, Morgan Hill, and other places. And so we're keeping our eyes on that. The same thing, obviously, you heard from Keisha talking about the CZU lighting complex. Santa Cruz and San Mateo border one another. And as Manuel was just talking about, our nonprofits on the ground in Pescadero are seeing a lot of impact there as well. And then finally, the LNU lighting complex. Our region, our United Way includes Napa and Solano County, and you heard from them. That's another large fire with a lot of structures being affected. One of the things, I mean, obviously on the ground on our 211, the information coming in from us is a lot of people calling 211 and asking, how do I evacuate? Which streets are open? Which roads are open? So getting people the right information around fire is really important. Lots of requests already for hotel vouchers, motel vouchers, cash assistance, small amounts, up to $500 to pay for incidentals, masks and PPE. That's been something that we're hearing. And so one of the things we're thinking about is We're also the backbone agency for our census operations in a 7-county region. And, that's, of course, how all these issues are connected. We working, here in our region with the Community Foundation, Silicon Valley Community Foundation in our county, we have just been starting to mobilize for our last few week push about getting people in neighborhoods to augment the census count in our hardest to count areas, which coincidentally now are overlapping with the evacuation zones and with everything else. So that's had to be a pivot to, when we pivoted 5 days ago, now we're pivoting again to how do we get more phone volunteers and people calling families to let them know about the last few weeks of census, because we normally would have you driving a lot of people to these neighborhoods, which we can't. So in any case, just really quick, it was mentioned earlier that the 5 United Ways that make up the Greater Bay Area and the Central Coast are coming together to launch one fund that we'll host here at United Way Bay Area. This is for United Way of Santa Cruz, United Way of Monterey County, United Way of Wine Country, and United Way of California Capital Region, and then ours. All told, that's 20 counties, and it covers 7 or 8 of the largest fires. So by the end of today, we'll have the website up and the fund set up so that if people just need, I know for our partner United Ways, they're having a lot of their staff evacuate, and it's just too much to ask for them to set up their own funds and to process all of that. So we're going to have one United Way general fund. That way we can get the money out quickly to the different local United Ways to address some of these issues.
Hey, thank you, Kevin. And I think you highlighted the communities, as we are going through Census 2020, which I think we all care so much about, is thinking about how this fire might be impacting, the last few weeks of Census 2020. So that is for further conversation. We have beyond the 3 complexes, we also have various fires out in Monterey County. Dan, are you online? And yep,
yes.
Dan Bowen?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
Great.
It's been an odd week because we have 3 fires going. Monterey County is very, very large, just geographically. 2 of the fires are in pretty, they're rural, but they're in pretty well-populated areas near Salinas. And then we have a fire that unfortunately was actually caused by an arson down in Big Sur. So similar situation where, we're a hospitality driven economy, thousands and thousands of hotel rooms, and they're all full. So even a voucher system doesn't really help at this point. A lot of congregate shelters have been set up. We've got a fund. Obviously, we do this for all disasters. And today we'll be solidifying our grant making. The challenge, I think, though, is, and I'm sure the other community foundations can relate, is just trying to get your arms around where to direct grants to really support, the immediate need. And so we'll be determining that today. We'll get some grants out the door today. I think one of the things that hasn't really come up here yet is donor fatigue. The COVID-19 relief funds that we've all started, we reached out to our donor advisors, we reached out to our communities. I'm writing an email right now to our donor advisors about giving to the fire relief fund, acknowledging that just 3, 4, 5 months ago, I guess it was 5 months ago, I made that same appeal to the COVID-19 relief fund. And we'll see what the response is. There was a tremendous response to the COVID appeal, but there's a finite level of resources. And so, Kathleen, I see you making notes. Whatever public monies that can come in to support philanthropic dollars, are really greatly needed at this point. But this, I mean, thank heavens we didn't get the weather we were expecting Saturday night and Sunday night. And so some of our evacuation orders are being lifted, not all of them. So there may be some way to quantify the situation. That's the biggest problem with something as it's unfolding, is like, how large is it going to be and where's the need going to be? I probably spoke too long. Thank you, Alan, for the opportunity. My thoughts are with all of you. We're all trying to work on this.
Yeah, same here, Dan. Dan, thank you again. Dan is from Community Foundation for Monterey County. Katie, are you here? If so, Katie from Another Way, Monterey County, are you online? Okay. So I think what Dan mentioned around donors fatigue and pointing to how philanthropy can be most effective now. You know, philanthropy has been very effective for the COVID-19 response, and now we are calling on philanthropy to step up again. So I'm going to transition to Kathleen. Kathleen, can you share with us how philanthropy, what's the role of philanthropy now, and how can we do the most good?
Thank you so much, Alan. Well, I just want to take a minute to just acknowledge all of the incredible work that is happening in communities throughout our state. It's not just donor fatigue. I mean, all of you are leading on the front lines, and you know, you've been leading for the last 5 months in so many ways, and now at a moment when our communities are facing even more crisis, you're all stepping up and doing more. So thank you for all of the efforts of our United Ways, our community foundations, our community-based leaders who are our eyes and ears on the ground and alongside our statewide response, and really on the front lines of supporting our communities during this time of need. And also just want to reiterate that Dan's point that, you know, we have already asked donors to dig deep in their pockets, and now we are asking donors to dig deeper, which is hard. And yet, how can we not during this time when so many thousands of Californians have been evacuated and so many have lost everything during this disaster, not to mention so many vulnerable communities, as we've heard in Napa and Solano and Sonoma, who are facing the decision of whether to go to work and put their lives at danger already for COVID, and now with the smoke, but knowing that this is their, in many cases, only opportunity to make income for the year. And so just a few thoughts that I have along how donors can be most effective in supporting our statewide wildfire response. First of all, we need donors to do more. Philanthropy is so important during disasters. As you heard from Abby, there are so many ways that the state and the federal government is supporting communities right now with hotels, with disaster support. And yet philanthropy is that nimble capital, the gift cards that can help someone get gas that they need, the incidental expenses, the supporting the ways that communities need right now, and both in the immediate term as well as the longer term. And so we do need philanthropy to be supporting. I want to reemphasize, we've heard this across the board, but cash is what's needed most. And that's always true during disaster. And could not be more true right now during COVID-19. So many communities have been saturated with in-kind donations, which have been very helpful, but really right now what we need is cash support. Also want to reemphasize what so many have pointed out about how important it is to be supporting vulnerable communities in particular. So many communities who are suffering from the fires are the same communities who've been suffering from COVID: farm workers, unemployed, workers, people who are on the brink of losing their homes. And so the nonprofits that are supporting these communities are often the ones that are also stretched thin, and we need to double down and support those organizations during this time. And then finally, I just want to point out, and I know this is something that Alan will emphasize as well, oftentimes in disaster, there's so much attention that happens in the immediate aftermath of the relief efforts. But we know that the effects of disaster last for many, many months and years after the impact of the actual disaster. You can ask anyone in Sonoma, in Napa, in Paradise, they are still feeling the effects of the disasters years ago. And so we need to ensure that we're investing in support, not just for the next days or weeks, but that we're investing in the resilience of our communities for the long term, because this is the new normal. We are going to be facing more and more wildfires, and we need communities to be prepared. And so any philanthropic support that can go toward preparedness is also really important at this time.
Kathleen, thank you so much for sharing your insights. And I think the need for not only disaster relief, recovery, but long-term resilience is really important. So I'm going to talk about some of these philanthropic resources or funds that are being set up. And I am going to have Laura Seaman first. She is from a CEO from the League of California Community Foundation, in which she and the league has set up a brand new fund. Laura, go ahead.
Great, thanks, Alan. I'm a little surprised you're not sick of seeing me yet, and I'm grateful for the invitation to join this conversation. I'm with the League of California Community Foundations. We're a statewide coalition founded in 1994, currently made up of 30 member foundations across the state, now serving over 95% of the population of California. As you all know on this call, community foundations have been around in the state a lot longer than 1994, and certainly have been on the front lines of helping their communities navigate all sorts of crises for going on 100 years now, including that many community foundations were born out of natural disasters and quickly became anchor organizations in their communities by filling this gap for permanent local funds to address all sorts of challenges and opportunities. As we've seen recently in the last 5 or 6 months throughout the COVID crisis, community foundations have been flexible and nimble. Many of them have pivoted to support not just local nonprofits, but individuals, families, small businesses, and to working really closely with local government on things like procurement of protective equipment, advocating for their communities with respect to federal and state COVID relief funds, and a lot of policy advocacy as well. So the League has recently, as in 3 to 4 days ago, move forward to host a pooled fund for the work that community foundations are doing and leading across the state. The purpose of this fund is really to provide a centralized opportunity specifically for corporate funders, private foundations, who may not be connected very well locally on the ground, or who simply want to support an effort that's a bit more statewide, to really invest in disaster response and resilience through community foundations who are trusted local intermediaries and deeply connected to the affected communities. I'll drop a link in the chat in just a moment to this fund so you can take a look. 2 things I want to highlight. One, that this fund really is geared toward a specific subset of potential funders who want to, in one fell swoop, support a statewide response by community foundations across these multiple pillars of relief, recovery, and much longer term resilience. And then secondly, my personal request to everyone on this call is to please know that the League welcomes, and I welcome, partnership and collaboration and just feedback, including ideas we haven't envisioned yet as we've conceived this fund. And I'm sure there are many in a group as experienced as this one. So please reach out with any feedback or ideas for how we can work together to build more resilient communities across California. And then before I wrap up, just speaking of collaboration, I can't thank Alan and Kathleen and Abby enough for their leadership and their guidance and their very polite nudging to finally bring this effort to life in a thoughtful and hopefully timely way. So thanks for all of your support.
Yeah, Laura, thank you so much. And this fund, maybe I can have a question for you. This fund is conceived not just for this wildfire, but for long-term disaster relief, recovery, and response. Is that correct?
That's right.
Great, yeah. So this is going to be a long-standing fund, and that will help support community. And I would say maybe Kelly or Kevin, maybe you can chime in again around the United Way Fund. Are there anything you would like more to add? We'll be on our NCG website, disaster response website. We'll be listing all of these funds. So anything you want to add, Kevin or Kelly?
No, I think we covered it before. We'll have it have something for you guys up and running that you guys can put up there later today or tomorrow. But thanks again for letting us be a part of this call.
Definitely, thank you. And I will have two other funds that just want to read. Many of the callers and many of you talk about support for farm workers, undocumented folks. We also have the Undocu Fund, as well as the Latino Community Foundation's NorCal Wildfire Relief Fund. Gabby or anyone would like to share anything around those two funds? Susan?
I can share a little bit about Undocu Fund. When COVID started, we helped a lot of similar funds get started across the state following our model. And so that helped deploy resources. And we've worked very closely with GCIR around the California Immigrant Resilience Fund. We currently have actually a farm workers who are affected by COVID specific fund within Undocu Fund. And we've been getting money, over $1 million so far, into the hands of farm workers who were affected by COVID. Of course, we're trying to raise or receive as much money as we can from our partners. The Community Foundation has been great in helping us get into relationship with other foundations and donors who are willing to give to Undocu Fund, and as has Wine Country. And so we're super appreciative. And the Latino Community Foundation has been, so many of you have really reached out to us and helped, including you, Alan. So thank you all very much. It's helped us be strong and get the money out that people need, and the direct aid.
Yeah.
The need is huge and has
Susan,
been well covered by
thank
everyone.
you. Yeah, thank you, Susan, and for all the work that you do. So we're listing all of the different funds right now currently up on our website. And I think we'll just, this last 6 minutes, and maybe I just want to maybe take 1 minute or 2 minutes just to share, this is just the start of the wildfire season. And I feel like, I'm on this call every time there is like in September or October. Right before this call, I feel like, I share with some of the funders, like Karen, from Sonoma County. It's like, this is like a Groundhog Day. And I'm just wondering, like, how long do we have to do this for? And do we have to have these calls every time of a wildfire? And is this really sustainable? Because we are seeing these massive fires over and over again, especially within my less than 2 years here in my position. And so Philanthropic California, as well as some of our funders partner, including More Foundation, Hewlett Foundation, Resources Legacy Fund, Vibrant Planet, as well as Smart Growth California, the last 2 months, we hosted around 6 sessions around what can funders do to start investing in a long-term resilience. What that means is mitigating as well as preventing or preparing communities for these wildfires, as well as other disasters, but specifically wildfires. And so we have about 250 registered funders across the state of California and out of state who attended one of these 6 sessions to learn about what are some of the impacts of wildfires and COVID-19. How can we restore our forests? How can we use our innovative financing to ensure that we don't see these catastrophic wildfires? What can we do to change our policies from local to federal policies around land use, as well as policies to reduce the risk of communities from experiencing these wildfires? So we are going to hope to have more smaller conversations around with funders to shape future conversations around these long-term solutions, not just immediate relief, but long-term solutions. So we encourage every funder on this call and in future calls to fill out a quick survey to share what you're thinking of. How can you be part of an integral solution to address the long-term resiliency of our communities and our state, as well as to ensure that we don't get these catastrophic wildfires happening over and over again. So we encourage everyone to fill out a survey. And with that, I think that is my soapbox for a moment. And I just want to turn the last few minutes to any Q&A. Anyone wants to chime in or have any questions for any of the callers or funders on this call? Or any funders, you have any last comments that you want to share that has not been covered? Karen, go ahead.
I think it's really important, and it hasn't been mentioned. Kathleen Janus mentioned very briefly, but the mental health impacts of multiple disasters and with COVID on top of it, alongside our decreasing funding for mental health, I think this needs to really be elevated as critical, especially for our young people. We hosted the Youth Truth Survey here, and our young people are really, really suffering from these multiple disasters. And so we have to think about culturally diverse mental health services, not just going to a therapist. This is one way of approaching it, but how are we expanding our thinking around supporting the various needs related to the mental health impacts of these disasters?
Karen, thank you so much. And Karen from Community Foundation Sonoma County. Yeah, the mental health issues is definitely something is pressing right now. It has been pressing, since COVID-19, or even, for Sonoma County and many other fire impact communities has been going on for years. And we are just seeing compounding, issues, and that are exacerbating mental health from young people to those who are socially isolated. Thank you for raising that, Karen.
Can I just add to what Karen said,
yes,
that
Julia?
we're still planning around public safety power shutoffs in the month of September as well. And those often are very triggering for people who have experienced fire. And on top of that, it creates additional financial needs with loss of food, loss of work. So that's something that unfortunately I think we have to kind of pivot momentarily to being ready to respond, as well as a prolonged fire season potentially.
Yeah. And yes, PSPS, the Public Safety Power Shutoff, is definitely on top of mind, and it will happen. We know that it will happen, and then we just know that, who are the mostly impacted. Again, the medically underserved, the older adults, people who are farm workers, people, we don't have, low-income folks. So you'll have, unfortunately, we'll have more calls like this in the coming months. In the meantime, I just want to be respectful and thank you so much for everyone for your flexibility. For all the callers, we'll be okay sharing, some of the information that you have shared with us to other funders who are not able to join this call. But we want to direct everybody to NCG website. We will have another call on next Wednesday, September 2nd from 10 to 11 a.m. And we'll be sharing that information to all the funders to join the call. And if you can share that with your colleagues, that would be much appreciated. Again, that call will be next Wednesday, September 2nd from 10 to 11. In the meantime, thank you so much to all the funders to join the call. Thank you, Kathleen and Abby from the state of California, and to all the callers who joined in. I want everyone to take 3 deep breaths after this call, and and just plug along. And please take care of yourself. We are here for the long haul. So thank you so much for all your partnerships on behalf of Northern California Grantmakers. Until next time, have a wonderful morning.
Thank you for your leadership, Alan. It's really tremendous to have your leadership during these times.
Thank you. Yeah, and thanks to all of you. Have a wonderful, blessed week. Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay.